Hey guys, this is Frank Yecker, and you're listening to Submission Radio.
Hey, this is Rich Franklin.
What's up, everybody? This is Chris Lieben.
This is Diego Sanchez, Randy Couture,
Alistair Overeem.
Hi, this is Stephen Bonner.
This is Don Fry.
Hey, I'm Phil, Mr. Wonderful Davis.
TJ Dillashaw.
You're listening to Submission Radio.
Submission Radio.
Submission Radio.
Submission Radio.
You're listening to Submission Radio.
Welcome to Submission Radio. It's Wednesday, the 1st of August. Submission Radio, UFC 227 preview show, or episode 165, as it's known in the hardcore circles of the MMA world. I'm Dennis Shkaratov here with Kasper Ozolowski. A really fun episode to get you guys revved up and ready for a big weekend of fights coming up with UFC 227, Cass.
Yeah, that's right, man. I'm pumped. I'm excited. The main event and the co-main event are the big focus this weekend. UFC 227, not super stacked. So we thought, you know what? Let's not dilly-dally. It is quality over quantity. We don't need to stack the guests with a million guests. Let's just get some fun people, some fun analysts, and preview the shit out of UFC 227. The main event, the co-main event, TJ Dillashaw versus Cody Garbrandt in the rematch. Demetrious Johnson and Henry Cejudo also in the rematch. 2 title fights. We got John Morgan jumping on the program to give us his sexy blend of blue polo analyst work. He's going to be talking about some of the things that happened this past weekend at UFC Calgary, the state of the UFC, a whole bunch of things, and of course, preview UFC 227. They got Jimmy Smith, the excellent analyst and commentator that he is, coming on the program to break down in depth the top 2 fights, DJ versus Cejudo and TJ versus Cody Garbrandt in the rematch. So it's a fun show. Also, Tommy Toehold. How could we forget? That's because we didn't forget. Tommy Toehold giving us his hilarious brand of previews. I always look forward to these. I always love when Tommy Toehold sends those through. Here it is. Here comes the preview. And I laugh my ass off. And hopefully you guys enjoy it too. So Tommy Toehold on the program as well.
Yeah, Tommy Toehold, an OG. And just on a side note, Cass, a guy that we really love working with. We've had a bit of a relationship with him for quite some time. He's always been such a good dude. So really proud to have him on this episode. Just like we're on most episodes when he comes on, it's always a lot of fun. Before we get into this show and get you guys revved and prepped and ready for UFC 227, just want to quickly mention something big that's happening down here in Australia, all across Australia, and that is GSP George St. Pierre, one of the biggest names in MMA, is coming down, and he'll be doing live shows down here, talking about his life, talking about his theories on training, business, and a whole bunch of other things. I just want to go through the dates right here, Cass. Sydney are the lucky ones. They get to get the show first. That is going to be on Tuesday, the 7th of August, 6 p.m. at the Star Events Center. I believe that's where you and me, Casper, interviewed John Kavanagh once.
Yes.
Big show. And much like that big show, this will be a great show as well. Melbourne, Saturday.
That's next week. How crazy is that? I look at these dates and I think that's far away.
Down.
Next week. That's insane.
Next week. He'll be touching down. It's going to be unbelievable. Melbourne, Saturday, the 11th of August, 6 p.m. at the Melbourne Convention Center. Also, where you and me interviewed John Kavanagh. I'll tell you what, Melbourne Convention Center and the Star Event Center, me and Casper know, just great venues to actually check out these shows. You're not too far away from them, but you're in a good distance where they can't spit at you, and if they have a contagious disease, you probably won't get it. So, both great venues, both great opportunities to go see GSP. And third date is, of course, Brisbane, sunny Brisbane, Sunday, 12th of August, 6 p.m. at the Brisbane Convention Center. You guys can jump on www.gsplive.com.au and book your tickets now. Just quickly, it's interesting because we've been talking to the guys behind this show. They're a great bunch of people, Fast Track Australia, and they're bringing GSP down, and it's going to be covering a whole array of topics. So it's going to be obviously about his UFC run, MMA, theories on training, but also he's going to be talking about his thoughts on business. Now, what people don't realize about GSP is he's probably one of the most successful businessmen when it comes to MMA. He's actually done some really smart investments. He's set up for the rest of his life. And it's not just because of the massive fights that he's had, because he's had a big part of his career that they weren't paying that well. A lot of it has to do with the fact that he's been smart about his investments. He's been smart about where he puts his money, and he'll be talking about that as well. So I think that's a perfect combination, Cass, because not only are MMA fans going to find out about his amazing UFC run and hear him possibly talk some interesting stuff about Conor McGregor and what happens next, and also some training, but they'll also get some advice, and who could not use some business advice right now, especially if you live in Australia and a house costs more than the amount of money that you could rob from a bank. To figure out what happens in the future as well. Who knows? Maybe GSP will turn your life around in a couple of ways. And I'm really pumped that he's going down to Brisbane as well, because we know usually these tours hit the main cities of Sydney and Melbourne, but I think a lot of people are really happy that Brisbane is happening too.
Oh, absolutely. You can't leave out old Brisbane. It's where my girlfriend lives. It's a small town. It's a small city, but hey, they need love too. And it's amazing. 3 nights of GSP for you guys. You can get tickets. I'll let you guys know what the options are. For silver, a cheap $69. You get silver section seating. That's behind gold. You get a tour program. I like that they include the tour program, because a lot of this kind of stuff is usually extra. You got to buy the extra merch. They give you the tour program. You get a chance to ask GSP a question during the Q&A session. What have you always wanted to ask GSP? Now's your chance. You also get a chance to bid on unique GSP memorabilia during the auction. So there's going to be an auction as well. How fun is that? Gold is $89. Gold section mid seating. That's behind the VIP seating. We'll get to that in a second. You get a tour program, chance to ask GSP a question during the Q&A, and of course the chance to bid in the auction. VIP photo op, $399 if you like. Front section seating. Right, that's pretty good. Behind platinum, you get a post-event professional one-on-one photo opportunity. I hear GSP in the past has charged quite a lot for these photos, so the fact that it's included is pretty good. You get a tour program, and you get a show bag. What's in the show bag? Nobody knows.
Will there be a Twizzler in there?
Maybe it's a piece of GSP's skin, perhaps. Maybe. Probably not. I don't think so. That'd be more expensive.
They should put a piece of his hair into every bag.
Just like a little snip. Yeah. You get a chance to ask GSP a question during the Q&A session. See, this is what I love. Every package you get to ask GSP a question, which makes it nice and involved, and you guys can kind of dictate, where the conversation goes. Of course, you get to bid on the auction as well. Or for all the hardcore GSP heads out there is the Platinum Experience. Only 35 available per city. They're $1,395. Priority admission to the event, front row seats, pre-event reception, and canapes. Ooh, canapes. Post-event professional one-on-one professional photo opportunity. This is not a selfie on a phone. This is a professional photo. Autograph limited edition frame memorabilia valued at $600. Bam, it's yours. You get an exclusive tour t-shirt, exclusive official GSP headband. That's pretty cool. Exclusive event lanyard, tour program, a show bag, and of course everything else that comes with all the other packages. You get to ask a question and you get to bid on the auction. So those are the options there. There's also a private dinner with GSP. That is in Sydney on the 7th, Melbourne on the 11th, and Brisbane on the 12th. You get to enjoy a 3-course dinner at a 5-star restaurant, get an exclusive photo opportunity, and it's only 12 guests per city. And I imagine if you're having GSP for dinner, you will probably get to ask him a whole bunch of questions. So there you go, guys. Whole bunch of fun stuff there.
It's going to be exciting. And me and Cass will be, I think, at the Melbourne show on the Saturday, the 11th. So who knows, if you go down to that show and you see us walking around, you can come and say hi to us. Maybe give us what your question's going to be. We've had that happen before. People go, this is what I want to ask in the fan Q&A. What do you think?
Yeah.
Okay, this is great. But add this to it as well, and then we'll put it up on our YouTube channel. So you never know. Go see us. We'll probably be low-key in a hat and a hoodie, but if you recognize us, come have a chat. Fake mustaches. But yeah, and also Sydney, speaking of Sydney, on the Monday, Cass, maybe fans could get excited about some sneaky GSP content coming to Submission Radio as well.
Yes. We'll be flying there on Monday. Excited. GSP is going to be there. Apparently, there's going to be a press conference. Who knows? Maybe some fun GSP content for you guys. We're very excited about that. And also a big thank you to Fast Track Events Australia because they did supply us with tickets that we will be giving away. You guys obviously entered on the Facebook page, Submission Radio. What is our Facebook page? Facebook.com/Submission Radio AU. And you guys entered.
I think I've been saying AU for the past 12 years, but it's actually AUS, yeah.
You learn something new every day. How about that?
We didn't even know what our URL was for the page. No wonder no one likes it.
We do our research for the guests. We do zero research on our own social media.
I don't know where I live,
The point is people entered the competition. They somehow found it, right?
Yeah.
Against all odds, they found it. They found the URL. They entered, and we're very happy to be able to give away these tickets to you guys. So we'll be giving away tickets to Melbourne and to Sydney. The competition is closed. If you haven't entered by now, maybe GSP will come back in the future, and we'll do another competition.
Yeah, that's it. And look, I think you mentioned it before. the silver, even if you don't have much cash flow, which is me and Casper for a lot of it, and there's a lot of cool people that have come down. The silver tickets, not extremely out of people's budgets, and we'll still let them enjoy the festivities of the events. So I still encourage everybody to jump on, get in there. From what I understand, when I was talking to Fast Track Events, and this was about a week ago, tickets are selling very, very quickly. So I would encourage people to jump on and grab your tickets if you missed out on the competition and become a part of the fun. Seems like something fun. And I don't know if GSP will be back to Australia.
Yeah,
to be honest with you guys, as much as we'd like to think that he'll be fighting on the UFC Adelaide card December 1st, it just doesn't seem likely. He might not be ready in time.
It will only be because he's not ready. I'm surprised he's coming down at all. Remember when there were rumors about him and Nate Diaz, and we were saying, look, there's this potential seminar, talk that he's going to do. It's either going to be the talk or Nate Diaz, and not both. And I'm kind of leaning Nate Diaz. Well, Fast Track Events, they did it somehow. They managed to get him not just for one night, but for 3 nights. So exciting times. Our hats are tipped for them. But anyway, it is the UFC 227 preview show. There are other things to cover as well. And I believe our first guest is on the line. Dennis, you're about to introduce him.
All right, guys. Our next guest is joining us live from his lair in his home. We can see the amazing artwork on the walls there. For us, UFC posters are artwork. Who are we kidding? He's the man that's made blue one of the most fashionable colors out there for every MMA fan. You know him from his amazing work at MMA Junkie, of course, the MMA Roadshow, friend of the show, John Morgan. Welcome back to Submission Radio. Great to have you, man.
What's going on? If you look real close, you can see my wife laying in the background being lazy before she goes to Contender too. So
see, this is good. You never know who's going to
hold a fan.
Yeah, you never know who's going to pop up. Last time it was Michael Bisping, Brett Okamoto. Now your wife.
John Morgan's wife.
Yeah.
Who's going to be next week, John?
That's exactly
We like
right.
to keep it interesting around here. You know what I'm saying?
The Thailand soccer team's going to be in the background. Who knows?
Dana White just walks through like with a towel, like, oh, don't mind me, guys. Before we talk, obviously, about UFC 227 this weekend, got to get your thoughts on, obviously, last week's episode of the Contender series. In particular, our latest export, Jimmy Crute, because we know as soon as you finish chatting with us, you're going to be going there, obviously. Jimmy Crute, who was able to win a contract, what did you think of his performance and Dana White's praise afterwards for him?
I liked it a lot, man, to be honest with you. He kind of struck me. I met him at the weigh-ins. I've been going to the weigh-ins last year, which we didn't get to do that the first season. So I've been going this year and at least getting some photos and a little video and that sort of thing. And just him and his team, they were in high spirits the whole time, and seems like a personable guy. And then went out there and impressed as well. The dude can definitely bang. So impressed. I mean, look, man, to make the trek over here for a chance like this, dude, that can't be easy. These aren't high paying fights. I mean, 5-5 isn't bad money, but it's you start bringing some coaches and things like that. It's a haul to get over here, as you guys know. So kudos to him for taking the chance. And the kid definitely looks like somebody to keep an eye on.
It's interesting because he's done a bunch of techniques for us previously. Obviously, him and Sam Greco have a great relationship, so we've got to meet him before. And when you sort of see him from far away, you're like, I'm not sure if this guy's in the right weight class. He looks a little bit smaller. But then when you sort of see him up close, you're going to see that he's a bit thicker in certain areas of his body. So what do you think? Do you think light heavyweight's the place for him? Or do you think he might need to look at possibly going down to middleweight?
I mean, that's such a great point, because I thought the same thing originally too. I had to double check my my bout sheet. I was like, wait a minute, like is this the right weight class? But you're right, man. It's thick. It's hard to say like Mark Hunt or something like that, because Mark Hunt is obviously big. But bigger boned like that, it just sees. So, I would say, light heavyweight probably is the better place. Honestly, if you get down to middleweight, I think you start dealing with some better athletes sometimes, especially right now, man. The top of that light heavyweight division is nasty. And, the middleweight division is nasty. Light heavyweight, obviously you got John Jones, and that's a monster up there. But I think there's a better opportunity to make an immediate impact at 205 pounds. And, I feel like we're starting to see this list of fighters that are doing better, not cutting weight. Look at your guy from the region, Dan Hooker, as well, how much he looks better. Dustin Poirier looks better at a higher weight class for sure. So, man, honestly, I don't know that he looks specifically suited for middleweight, even though I do think he's going to find himself being a little bit small. I think he's probably used to that at this point, and I think there's a better chance to make an immediate impact at 205. So I think that might be the right place for him. 205
is pretty bad, and of course Robert Whittaker's kind of the main guy you think of also of guys who don't cut weight anymore are performing better. Is it safe to say you'd want to see him on this Adelaide card in December? Do you know if he'll come down for that card by any chance? Because we'd love to see you, John.
I hope so, man. You know, it's the international travel budget this year has been a little lighter, so hopefully things continue to improve. Because I'd love to make it down there.
Tell him Jimmy Crute's fighting, all right? They won't be able to resist.
Oh yeah, the fine folks at USA Today will be all over that one.
We'll have a guy sitting there just clicking on the article over and over just to make sure that there's some evidence to back that up. John, what do you think about Nick Newell and his, I suppose, performance on the Contender Series last week? Because I suppose it's been a long lead up. A lot of people really wanted to see this guy make a transition over the UFC. It was almost sort of like a dream sequence in a movie where it seemed like he was going to get it done, but unfortunately he lost. Do you think that's it? Do you think that's one and done for him in terms of his opportunity to get in the UFC, or do you think he'll get another shot maybe sometime down the line?
I think it's going to be tough. I mean, I loved the fight. I actually saw Nick yesterday. He's still here in Vegas. In fact, he might be in the corner tonight. One of his teammates is actually fighting this evening. So, listen, man, I thought the fight was amazing. I thought Nick gave a tremendous showing of himself. I mean, we know what he's dealing with. And, I mean, this is a fist fight. You know, I mean, it's tough. And, I thought he showed his heart, man. I thought he battled well. And yeah, there was a moment where you thought you were going to get the fairy tale ending. He was going to lock this choke up, and Dana White was going to go crazy and give him a contract. And, but I don't know where we stand at this point, to be honest with you. I know the show did really well. I mean, it garnered a lot of mainstream attention. But I don't know. It's a tough spot. I don't think the UFC is going to go out of their way to give him a contract right now. And I don't know that he necessarily wants to toil away on the regional stage either. He's got some other things going on. I know he's having his first kid in November, and he's got some outside business interests, and he's bought a house. He's doing well for himself. So I don't know how long he can just keep, like I said, toiling away on that regional stage, waiting for the opportunity. And I don't think necessarily that the UFC is ready to kind of force the hand to give him a spot. So man, it's a tough spot for Nick Newell, but I loved it, man. I know he was emotional. Man, the fact that he came back and talked to the media afterwards, and I'm sure that you guys saw that interview, man, just the emotion that was in there. I think that guy is an absolute hero, man. I think he's an incredible influence, an incredible role model. And even though he didn't get it done, man, I think he deserves all the praise in the world.
It's interesting that you mentioned the show doing well, because it almost feels like, to me, the Contender Series, it's almost like a separate little league away from the UFC. Do you see a point maybe down the track where there are these fan favorites like Nick, like a bunch of guys that don't get in, that sort of get another shot at the Contender Series, and it almost becomes its own little entity on the side there?
I don't think that's the plan right now that Dana White has for it, but I think I could see a spot for that. You know what I mean? Where it's like, these guys, maybe we don't necessarily, we know that they're not necessarily going to be in the UFC, but we're having them around. I mean, they've given multiple people multiple opportunities on the show, right? So we're seeing a little bit of that. I think the only way that might happen is if ESPN Plus, asks for more shows, basically. I mean, look, Dana White has said, bro, I could do this every week. He's like, I could come do this every Tuesday. And I'm not going to lie, I could do it every Tuesday too, man. I love seeing prospects. I love the fast pacing, and I love seeing that next tier of fighters. So, I don't think in its current format anything like that would happen, but who knows? If they end up programming more of them, maybe it could be, who knows what you could do with it.
Yeah, or Nick Newell could grow a mustache and go down to Russia and become a part of UFC Russia, because that looks like it's its own separate little league. Yeah. Nick Newellkov or something like that. Obviously, just want to touch on this past weekend's win for Dustin Poirier. He got a really, really great win over Eddie Alvarez. He set himself up in a really good spot in the division. The only problem is that we know that what's next for the division is obviously Conor McGregor and Khabib Nurmagomedov. We can only assume at this point. So I guess, where does that leave Dustin Poirier? What makes sense for him next?
Yeah, that fight's going to happen. It's going to happen October 6th in Las Vegas. I think all signs are pointing to that at this point. But yeah, I think, listen, if you're Dustin Poirier, I think the smart thing to do is keep yourself healthy and stay around, man. Stay in shape, because that's a big fight. And I think what's going to happen, again, this is just a guess, but if they book Khabib and Conor the way we're expecting on October 6th, I don't expect there to be a whole lot of other quality on that fight card, just because that one fight sells everything. I don't think they're going to feel the need to have 2 or 3 title fights on it. So if that's the case, and then if, God forbid, something does happen to one of those two guys, now you're risking a pay-per-view. And, hey, we've seen Khabib get hurt, a couple times. We've seen some weight-cutting issues. So I think Dustin should honestly keep himself in shape and keep himself ready for that October 6th fight, because either way, either a title fight against Khabib or, a rematch, a grudge match against against Conor that wouldn't be for the title, but that would still sell tremendously and would be great for his career. I mean, either one of those fights is good. So, yeah, I mean, it's kind of frustrating if you think, man, I earned the spot, but now I got to sit around and wait. But I think he should, and I think he should not get out of shape, man. I think he should be ready to fight on October 6th just in case.
And not only that, I feel like the UFC should maybe get him to be a backup fighter like they have previously for some of the other fights because, like you mentioned, Khabib, and it's just bad. It's such a highly looked forward to fight. I mean, and Khabib in the mix. Who knows what's going to happen? Maybe a can goes flying. I think Dustin might have to stay in shape just in case. You mentioned the Contender series is doing really well. I want to talk to you, John, about some of the early reports for the ratings that have come in for UFC 226 via Dave Meltzer. According to him, they look pretty disappointing. It's just early, but the number seems just under 400,000 buys, pay-per-view buys. Also, the Tough 27 finale main card on the Friday night did 499,000 views, making it the least watched main card for live UFC events ever on FS1. What do you make of the numbers? Did you expect a higher sort of result from people?
I'm shocked, to be honest with you, but I guess in some ways we shouldn't be. I mean, this is such a star-driven sport, and maybe those people that were on that card in Calgary weren't the biggest stars, but holy hell, I mean, anybody that knew anything about MMA knew that was going to be a crowd-pleasing card, and it ended up being great. So, yeah, I was a little bit surprised to see it, but, you know, I guess probably not necessarily to be, a shock to everyone. I mean, the one thing that interested me a lot about this TV deal, about being announced with, you know, all this time out, I mean, we still got half a year to go, is, I mean, if you're Fox, like, how do you not be kind of a lame duck partner? I mean, I know you don't want to just totally tank. I think that would look unprofessional, you know, if you were doing further negotiations down the road with other sports leagues and that sort of thing. They're like, look at the way you treated the UFC just because your deal was. I mean, you're still under contract right now, so you still should be doing something. But I mean, let's be honest. If you know something's going away in 6 months, I mean, how much effort are you really putting into promoting it? You know, I just can't see you going out of your way to really hustle. So, I was a little bit shocked, to be honest with you. I thought the card was quality. I know I had been looking forward to it, but I guess it's not totally to be unexpected. I imagine we might still see some further lag as this deal kind of limps its way to the finish line.
Yeah, I'm curious what that final Fox card is going to look like for the UFC right before they depart to ESPN. Not expecting any Brock Lesnar's or Conor McGregor's exactly.
It would be fun. I mean, the UFC wants to live up to their end of the bargain too, but come on, man, you got to imagine in the back of their heads, they're like, just take this crap fight here. We don't really care. I mean, you know.
It's like an ex-girlfriend. You don't want to waste any energy impressing that. UFC 227 is this weekend, John. You know, card's gone through some changes. How tough is it losing names like Gustafsson, Volkan Ozdemir, Derek Brunson? How tough has that been for this card? And ultimately, what are your expectations when it comes to pay-per-view buys? Because looking at it, you got two great. You know, you got a main event, you got a co-main event, you got a couple of good fights here and there, but it's a pretty bare card.
It is. No, it is, man. You know, it's funny. I was just literally talking to my wife before this. You know, I'm packing my bag right now. I'm actually I'll fly out tomorrow morning to go to LA, and I love the two title fights. Love the two title fights. I mean, really love them. But I know it's not. It's well established at this point. The lighter weights just don't do the type of impact in the market that the bigger weight classes do. So I don't expect anything to sell that well, to be honest with you. And then the names that you mentioned that might have kind of bolstered fan interest a little bit, they're not there. So it's bizarre because from a fan point of view and a quality fight point of view, the top two fights are ridiculous, and I can't wait for them. But from a business expectations point of view, yeah, I got to think this is going to be a bit of a failure. I am expecting – I do think there's a good chance that we get that Conor Khabib fight announced this week. Just a guess. But I imagine, we're in Los Angeles, huge media market. We already know the UFC officials are kind of hinting at a press conference particularly happening. And I got to think that would be the perfect place to announce that fight. Now, whether that would have any kind of interest, of course, neither one of those guys would be fighting on the card, but, just do the more headlines and that sort of thing, help pique a little bit of interest, maybe. But yeah, when I look at this, if I'm being honest, from a business perspective, I don't expect it to be a huge success.
Imagine that the press conference goes down and the Demetrious Johnson scrum, people just start asking him about who he thinks wins between Conor McGregor and Khabib. It's just going to be, okay, you're fighting this weekend, but tell us what you think about Conor McGregor. What about Jose Torres fighting Alex Perez on the early prelims? Do you think Torres, sort of being a guy that's being built up by the UFC right now, a guy with a lot of interest behind him, should sort of be in a better spot on the card? I mean, do you think the early prelims, the main event of the early prelims is the right spot, or do you think he should possibly be in the main event of the actual televised prelims?
Well, it's funny, I'll tip my hand a little bit to you. Our schedule tomorrow, Wednesday morning, typically what we do at Junkie is the first day when there's not media activities in the morning, we'll do extra interviews with guys that aren't on the schedule. And I picked out 4 guys. I picked out the 2 guys that are in the featured FS1, which is Brett Johns and Pedro Munoz. I think that's a fantastic fight. And I also picked out Alex Perez and Jose Shorty Torres to talk to them who are in the featured Fight Pass spot. So, yes, you got to remember that featured Fight Pass slot, I know fighters don't necessarily look at it. Eric Winter, who I'm sure you guys met over the years, when he was back in charge of Fight Pass, he went out of his way to make sure people realized that, look, that featured Fight Pass slot is something big for us because we're trying to get people to sell pay-per-view or to sell subscriptions to Fight Pass. And if you're always just putting basically the last 3 or 4 fights of the card, like, why would anybody pay for that? You got to put fights that mean something. I think that's what they're doing with Perez and Jose Torres because it's a fantastic fight. So, from the UFC's point of view, I do understand why it's there. What that means long term. Would it be better off putting them on FS1? Well, I mean, listen, we just said the broadcaster and the ratings are a little bit lagging. So, honestly, I kind of understand the positioning here. Whether the fighters love it or not, I don't know, but I kind of understand what the UFC is doing here, and I think it's a good spot. I guess I just heard just like a few minutes ago that Betch Correia was ruled out. Now that fight with Irene Aldana is going to be scratched, so they're going to have to promote something from Fight Pass. Maybe that fight does get bumped up to FS1. We'll see. But I know Irene Aldana, but Betch Correia was actually a fight I was kind of looking forward to because, I mean, they're going to stand and bang. So, even though it's not like a huge fight, stylistically, you're like, oh, that's going to be fun, man. 2 strikers are just going to go out there and throw down, and now that fight's off. So, yeah, man, it's a rough one in LA.
Terrible. Well, the good news is Cub Swanson has not been ruled out yet. As it stands, as of recording, Cub Swanson is fighting Renato Moicano. Cub's had some tough fights lately, with 2 losses back-to-back to the likes of Frankie Edgar, Brian Ortega, only losing to the top guys. Renato is a bit of a step down in competition. Do you believe Cub can pick up his first win for the year?
Love this fight. Again, not one that's going to move the needle a lot, but to give us a big, kind of measuring opportunity of where Cub Swanson stands. Actually, Cub is one of the guys we're speaking with tomorrow morning as well, and I'm anxious to hear where he's coming from. He's a family guy. We know that his family's growing, and he's changing his training situation, he's changing his living situation. Sometimes those things are good to get a restart. Sometimes they can be bad because, you're not getting the type of push that you need or the type of training partners you need. It doesn't sound that way. He's training with some absolute studs. But listen, Renato Moicano is no joke, man. You're right. Now, not the proven star, so to speak, but a talented athlete. I think the odds makers have Renato as a pretty strong favorite, if I remember correctly, which I was a little surprised to see, but just goes to show that the odds makers are getting sharp in their knowledge of the fighters, not just name value. You know what I mean? So, man, this is a big moment for Cub Swanson, and I'm kind of anxious to get with him tomorrow morning and see where his head's at because, man, I could see this going either way. Cub has kind of always lost to that top tier, right when he reached the very top. Renato's not that guy yet, but that doesn't mean he doesn't have the talent to be that guy. So I find this one very intriguing.
I can't wait to see that interview. And that's one of the great things about you guys is the fact that you go out there, you get your interviews nice and early, and it doesn't always have to be the biggest names in the sport. And I feel like you guys are kind of responsible for putting that spotlight on a lot of fighters that people had no idea about before the fight card. So we see it happen all the time here in Australia and whenever we're there. So it's something that's it's something that we respect, John. But let's talk about Cub for just a second in terms of his legacy, because this is a guy that's had so many exciting fights. I mean, when people see him on the card, when it comes to dudes that have been watching him for almost 10 years, people get excited. They get excited for a Cub fight. But also, this is a guy that sort of got into the dance, gotten close to the pinnacle, but never quite reached it, never really won the title, but's always sort of been in the mix. When it's all said and done, how do you sort of evaluate Cub's career?
It's been a good one. It's been a good one. It hasn't been a Hall of Fame one. I think Cub is somebody that certainly fans should know. I mean, hopefully you saw his WEC run and his UFC run as well. He's been a part of some amazing fights. He's always been great. It's tough. It's a guy that we've always been close to. MMA Junkie Radio a long time ago was Tag Radio before it became part of the MMA Junkie brand, and it was Trig and Gorgeous George, and those guys actually sponsored Cub Swanson way back in the day.
Wow.
So I mean, there's close ties, man. He's always been close to the MMA Junkie brand, and we've enjoyed following his career. A Southern California guy, so just down the road from Las Vegas. But I think his legacy is one of a very, very good fighter and a very exciting fighter, a fan-friendly style. Always was in good fights. But one that just came up short. I mean, he said it at this point. He doesn't even really care about titles anymore. At this point, it's just about enjoying himself and packing money away, to help take care of his family and move himself on to the next level. So I don't know that a championship run is even really, a focus to him at this point or even matters to him anymore. But nonetheless, I mean, definitely a very, very good fighter and one that should be praised for what he put together.
You mentioned the co-main event. Sorry, yeah, it is the co-main event. I forgot for a second. Demetrious Johnson takes on Henry Cejudo in the rematch. I mean, how would you gauge the excitement level over there in the US? Because over here in Australia, it's a fight that's sort of largely fallen through the cracks a little bit. What is the excitement like over in the US? And also, I feel like this is a little bit of a tough situation for Demetrious. He doesn't really gain a whole lot from beating Cejudo. Again, especially considering how dominant the first fight was for him.
I'd say people just aren't talking about it at all, which is a damn shame. I do feel Henry Cejudo is one guy that has the talent and the ability to beat Demetrious Johnson. Now, that doesn't mean that he's going to do it. I mean, Demetrious is... Man, I mean, he seems like nearly the flawless fighter. He's so fantastic at every aspect of the game. But, Cejudo, gold medal wrestling, I mean, that's legit. His striking has improved tremendously. And I do think that he's somebody that does have the quality, to beat him. I just don't know if he gets it done. But that said, the fan interest, I mean, it's tough. Demetrious Johnson just doesn't move the needle over here at all. And it's such a shame because, I think at worst, he's the second best fighter of all time. I mean, the dude is amazing, well-rounded, everything that he does. He just doesn't get the fan interest over here. And, I've been a guy that says, look, he doesn't need to move up to 135. A lot of people say, hey, it's time for him to move up. I don't think he has to. I mean, I think the records that he's setting are incredible. The fact that he is a finely tuned machine at 125 means I think he should stay right there if that's where he feels most comfortable. But if he's looking for these big checks that he talks about, and if he's looking for, to maybe get some more fan interest and move the needle a little bit, I think maybe he might have to go up to 135 and challenge one of these two guys.
I think the big deal with him is also the fact that, the UFC hasn't really been willing to pay him the kind of money he's looking for a big, massive fight. But if TJ sort of cuts the weight and finds himself down at a similar weight class, do you think that's a fight that makes sense next? Because when you're looking at the division, if he does beat Cejudo here, you got maybe Pettis, but apart from that, it seems like he's cleaned out the whole division.
It's interesting because to me, I like the idea of TJ going down to 125. Again, here's the thing is the way I look at it is, man, you get yourself and your body into like the perfect rhythm, right? And you find the weight that works perfect for you. Then to move up 10 pounds, which at flyweight, what is that, like 8% of your body weight at that point that you've got to add on to and move up? That's difficult. That's challenging. It's not just a couple of pounds like it is in boxing. So, I like the idea of TJ if he wins this fight going down to 125 like he said he would do. I think it'd be good. But honestly, so from just a fight fan perspective and from a legacy and greatness perspective, I like the idea of 125. But if TJ and Demetrious are going to fight, I think it gets more interest if it's at 135. Then Demetrious is the one moving up. Then you've got this all-time great champion challenging himself to move up another weight class. And I think that, to me, would be a little bit easier story to sell. I think that would be a little bit more captivating for people other than, well, Demetrious has beat everybody, so TJ, who's, defended the belt once, is going, I don't think it has as much intrigue as DJ going up. I may be wrong in that, and I like to fight either way. But I think from a casual fan, which is the people you got to sell to get those big numbers, I think the idea of DJ moving up is more intriguing than TJ moving down.
That's interesting. I don't think you're wrong at all. I just wonder if TJ would even go for it, because he's always said that he wants to go down to 125. Obviously, the lure of holding two belts is a big one for him, and he keeps saying that he doesn't want any excuses when he beats Demetrious Johnson, and people saying, oh, you were the bigger man and stuff like that. I wonder if the UFC could sort of sweeten the deal for TJ and say, look, you can't win another belt, but we'll pay you, a crap load of money. You've got a family, you got a kid, Come on, man, take the fight, man.
or and I agree, but or what about this? We say, listen, if you beat him at 135, we instantly do the fight again at 125. I don't know, maybe, you know what I mean? Like, maybe that's like, because DJ, maybe he would be deserving of a rematch, then TJ would get that shot to belt. Because you're right, I hadn't thought about that from TJ Dillashaw's point of view. Not getting that shot at a second belt might be kind of annoying. And then you got Dominic Cruz coming back. We're healthy.
Yeah.
That's tough, man. Yeah, wouldn't that be bad? He comes back. He's like, hey, we got this division on hold right now, Dominic. TJ's going down to flyweight for a little while.
Yeah.
Well, tell us, what do you think of this matchup? TJ takes on Cody. It's a fight that people are trying to break down, figure out who's going to win here. What's your prediction? Who do you think is going to win this weekend?
I'm going back and forth right now. My pick that's been turned in to our staff right now is TJ Dillashaw. But I gotta say, man, Cody Garbrandt in the back of my head, I keep thinking, how much did that back injury play into it? How much were other things going on at that time play into it? And hey, Cody was having some success. It wasn't like TJ came out there and smoked him. Boy, the end of that first round, what if there had been an extra 30 seconds that round, or maybe even less? So, I'm excited to go to the open workouts and kind of see, every now and then you can catch a little something or you get a little feel. But right now, my initial lean is TJ Dillashaw. But man, I'm going back and forth in my head. Cody Garbrandt, when he's on point, man, he is incredible.
Yeah, well, even though it's not a massive fight card, the top 2 fights, like you mentioned, are really worth checking out. So I'm excited. I know you're excited, John. Thank you so much for your time. Of course, guys, check out all of the excellent UFC 227 action and interviews on MMAJunkie.com. You've got content rolling out tomorrow, which by the time this episode comes out will actually be today. So guys, go to MMAJunkie.com. Of course, you can also check out the MMA Roadshow, which is an excellent podcast with John. A whole bunch of people, cold coffee, and always non-stop cameos, people rolling in. It's recorded in bars. There's fighters all the time. And of course, follow John on Twitter at MMAJunkieJohn. As always, man, thank you so much for taking the time. Always appreciate it.
You got it. Thank you, guys.
Hey, this is Tony Okagui Ferguson, and you guys listen to Submission Radio. Keep tuning in, guys.
What's up, fight fans? I'm the free-to-play mobile game of mixed martial arts, Tommy Toehold, and we are dead center in the heat of summer here in the United States, which means it's time for some serious kick-ass UFC cards, and UFC 227 is exactly that. Let's run through some reasons why you should definitely be watching this weekend. Number 1, TJ Dillashaw and Cody Garbrandt still fucking hate each other. It is so rare to get rivalries, real rivalries in mixed martial arts anymore. Everybody's best friends behind the scenes, and they all respect each other. TJ and Cody genuinely seem to not be able to fucking stand each other, and their first fight played out as such. It was raw and emotional, and remember when TJ won and he got right in Cody's concussed face and he unhinged his jaw so as to nearly swallow his head entirely? Yeah, there's absolutely no way in hell we're not going to see something like that again after this fight. The wounds from the last one haven't even settled in yet, so expect an absolutely hate-filled masterpiece of a fight between 2 genuine rivals at the top of their games. The second thing to look out for, we are possibly getting the setup of the biggest lower weight super fight we could possibly get. It was definitely no mistake that Demetrious Johnson is fighting right underneath Cody and TJ. If all goes according to plan, DJ wins his rematch with Henry Cejudo, TJ wins his rematch with Cody, and what do you know? Both fighters are available for a super duper fight that either secures Demetrious Johnson's legacy as the greatest fighter in the history of 2 people kicking the shit out of each other, or crowns TJ Dillashaw as the man to dethrone the king of flyweight. This is 100% what everyone and the UFC and the fighters are hoping for here, and it could very well happen. Who knows, maybe DJ jumps into the ring after the main event with his pants tucked into his boots and calls TJ out and tells Stipe and Francis Ngannou they fucking suck. The third thing to look out for on this card, Cub Swanson. Fight fans, this man is a gift to us all. He is violence incarnate, and who knows how many more times we'll get to see him doing his bloody dance of death before he decides that the world has seen enough. This fight will be insanity. Both Cub and his opponent, Renato Moicano, throw tons of strikes and they get hit just as much. Expect a crazy back and forth, the kind of fight that would put a tear in Cub Swanson's eye if he was watching because it's so beautiful. But he's not watching, he's kicking the shit out of people, and you gotta see it, it's gonna be awesome. The fourth reason to get fucking hyped, Thiago Santos is on this card. He's that guy with Thor's hammer on his chest. He is guaranteed entertainment. When he wins, it's almost exclusively via holy shit knockout. In 8 UFC wins, he's KO'd 7 people. And when he loses, he usually gets stopped. What I'm trying to tell you right now is that no matter what happens in Thiago Santos's fights, it's usually fucking awesome and somebody's getting finished. That is nearly a guarantee, something that is so rare in MMA. I don't even know if the main event will be happening by the time you hear this. Thiago Santos fucks shit up. Let's all be filled with joy he is gracing this card. And the fifth reason you should watch UFC 227, it's taking place in Los Angeles, California at the Staples Center, the new home of LeBron James. For all we know, LeBron's going to be in the front row that evening watching next to Dana White. LA always brings the stars out. You're going to get weird Vin Diesel appearances probably. You're going to get the cast of some show you've never heard of that the camera will cut to, and then nobody cheers for them because they have no idea who the fuck they are. And in turn, the stars stars will bring out the big UFC fighters because everybody wants free tickets sitting cage side when you're in LA. Everybody wants to rub elbows with Anthony Hopkins or some shit. Hannibal Lecter's probably not going to be there. That was a bad example, but he might. And you're not going to know unless you watch UFC 227. I know I'll be. I know the gentleman at Submission Radio will be. So I guess technically if you don't watch it, we'll just tell you about it. But whatever, you should totally watch it for yourself. I'm Tommy Toehold and I've rambled long enough here. See you Saturday, fight fans!
Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Demetrious Johnson, the UFC flyweight champion of the world, and you're listening to Submission Radio.
All right, guys, our next guest has been doing an excellent job as one of UFC's most fun color commentators, always known for his brilliant insight and analysis. We've got him on today to help us preview the big fights from UFC 227. Jimmy Smith, welcome back to Submission Radio. It looks like you're in a nice, chilled-out area for the interview. How are you today?
I'm doing great, man. Your intros are the only reason I do this show, because you make me sound way better than I really am. And that's really what I'm all about, guys. You guys are great.
Really appreciate it. I think that's why a lot of people come on the show. They come on for the intros, and then the interview starts, and they remember, they're like, oh, God. Why
they just zone out. They just zone out, yeah.
Yeah. You start well, you end well, and then you give people good memories. I'll throw a hard question at you at the very start, Jimmy, just to kick this thing off, right? Before UFC 227 begins, of course, we have to get through the weigh-ins, something that rarely happens these days without some kind of debacle. Now, I watched you on Fox, and you had a good suggestion. You suggested recently the fighters should essentially be penalized and have points deducted for missing weight. The amount of points depending on how many rounds the fight is set for. Fighters would also potentially be suspended for multiple weight misses. It sounds like a really good deterrent, but do you think that it might also make fighters cut weight beyond what their body can handle in order to avoid these penalties? For example, if somebody like a Darren Till is near death and they're thinking, I should probably stop, they may keep cutting weight because, hey, they don't want to lose those points or potentially be removed from their weight class or be suspended for a year.
Well, if you're near death, you shouldn't be at that weight class.
Mm.
I mean, it's very simple. It's one of those things where if your weight cut is so bad, you're worried about dying, and if I maybe cut this extra pound, it's going to kill me, I suggest you go up to middleweight. I mean, what everybody forgets is this isn't like the NFL. We're not, the UFC doesn't tell people, you're an outside linebacker, you're a receiver, you're a quarterback. It doesn't do that. If you can't make 70, go to 85. The hard part is that, there's this idea that fighters are locked in a particular weight class. They're not. If it's that tough, you got to move. Now, the addition of more weight classes certainly might help, but it might also encourage people to cut even more to go down to the middle weight class. So it's just a tough situation, man. What I was trying to take away with that situation is, if you miss weight, you won't win. It's harder to win the fight because what we're seeing with all these other things, you lose part of your purse, you lose this, you lose that. All that doesn't deter somebody from winning. If you think I might lose points during the fight and I'll start out at a 10-9 deficit in the first round, I'm not going to win even if I make weight. You got to take away the win from these guys, and that's a hard thing to do.
And what do you also make? I mean, we mentioned Till before. He's obviously got the title shot against Woodley. He gets the title shot after missing weight. We've seen Yoel Romero, he missed weight against Rockhold. Then he gets a fight against Whitaker. It doesn't really seem like, if you're looking at this thing from afar and you're a fighter, it doesn't look like you're really getting penalized properly for missing weight. A lot of guys getting title shots after, and especially a guy like Darren Till, who we're not even sure if he could make weight. Let's say he makes weight for this Woodley fight and wins the title somehow. There's no guarantees he'll ever be able to properly defend it because he may never make weight again. What do you make of that kind of situation that we're dealing with right now?
That's exactly the problem is. You got to remember, championship fight, that's another pound he has to lose. 171 won't do it. He's got to make 170 on the dot for a title shot. So, it's a matter of, let's say he wins. You have to have somebody who can consistently make the weight in order to defend the title and not hold it up. So, yeah, there's a big risk with all this weight cutting and guys missing weight is they end up getting a title or a title shot, and then what do they do in the division from there on out, especially with that extra pound to lose?
I'm glad he clarified that because I was going through your Instagram and I found that really interesting, so I wanted to bring that up with you. But we are obviously here to preview UFC 227. So just to kick things off, what would you say, if we're looking at the main event between TJ Dillashaw and Cody Garbrandt, what would you say is the most dangerous and best part of TJ Dillashaw's striking? Because he's a guy who not only mixes up, things by utilizing punches and kicks, where some guys are excellent kickers or excellent just punchers, but he also relies heavily on angles, on feints, on timing, on very, very tricky footwork. Even though he's not necessarily known for crushing knockout power, he's arguably one of the most complete strikers in MMA.
Wow, you just broke that down. I'm gonna have to steal all that.
You don't need to do anything now, Jimmy. Yeah.
I don't know. That's it. You literally just did it. To me, it's his versatility because he moves so well, he cuts angles so well, he sets everything up so well, and you never know what's coming. So as you're coming in, you don't know exactly where the punch is coming from. You don't know where it's going to. You don't know which weapon he's going to use. He switches stances a lot. His versatility is really his strength because he's never been a one-shot knockout guy. He times you right as you're coming in. You run right into his shot, and that's it for you. He's incredibly accurate. He throws great combinations, and he's a very, very smart fighter. So all those come together to kind of lead to knockouts, even though he's not what I'd consider a power puncher in and of itself.
It's interesting because Cody had a lot of momentum going into their first fight, and now he's dealing with, losing to TJ, but not only just losing to him, but, dealing with a knockout loss. How do you think that affects him mentally going into this fight, especially the fact that he's not really able to ride the same momentum going in here? And no matter what he knew about his injury, in the back of his mind, he still knows what happened in that first fight.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, what I was saying about this fight, and I've said it before, is former teammates, rivals, two of the best in the world, for a title, in a huge fight, a rematch, former champion, current champion. You're lucky to get two of those in a fight. This has 5 or 6 subplots that make it an amazing fight. That's crazy. So the thing about being a former champion is the mental toughness it takes to get there is really incredible. So under normal circumstances, I would say a knockout loss would be kind of devastating. Cody Garbrandt, I think, is going to be more motivated. I think he showed tremendous grit and guts and heart to get this far, to win the title, to come back and get this rematch. All of it means a lot to him. So if anything, I think it's going to be motivation. I think he respects the power of TJ Dillashaw. I think he thought he was kind of going to be the bully a little bit more in that fight, and then he was throwing a big punch and got caught right in the middle. So that respect is definitely going to be there in fight number 2. These guys may hate each other. They can't not respect one another's abilities. Not possible.
I always think it's fascinating when fighters are used to bullying fighters and then they sort of meet someone who they can't necessarily bully, and TJ Dillashaw might be that guy. And you were sort of talking about narratives. Would you agree that the narrative for this fight, probably more than anything, is how well Cody Garbrandt responds to adversity and how he bounces back? Because the funny thing is, when he beat Dominic Cruz, people are looking at him as kind of the next, potential big star in the division. And he's actually kind of in the same position that Dominic Cruz was in when Cody beat him, not that long ago.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the mental side, the comeback side, the thing that's so interesting to me when I break this fight down tactically, when I looked at it, when I'm studying it for the desk show this week, is the guy who initiated was in trouble. Both guys got hurt by a counterpunch. So in the first round, when Cody dropped TJ was coming in and got hit and went down. And then in the second round, it was Cody's turn. He came in, got caught in the middle of a combination, and got put out. So what's so interesting about this is they're both counterpunchers. They're both trying to bait the other guy in so they could unload. That worked great against Dominic Cruz, who's kind of a volume guy. That strategy worked very, very well. Against a guy as tricky as TJ Dillashaw, there are problems. He was trying to bait him in from the outside. And when Cody, who got the knockdown in round 1, kind of felt better about himself, and in round 2 decided to initiate a bit, boom, he gets knocked out. So there's that what you're talking about is that mental side of, I just got knocked out, how do I handle it? Both these guys have to be very careful going in. Both these guys have to be very careful initiating. In fight 1, in fight 2, in fight 5 between these two guys. If you initiate on these guys, they're such good counterpunchers. The one who finds his way in well, that could be the winner.
And it's interesting because if we look from TJ from a mental perspective as well, here's a guy that's saying, look, I had a significant back injury. But when you think to the fight, he had a lot of success against TJ as well. So TJ going into this fight, knowing that he's 100%, does that sort of raise any question marks in his head as to what kind of Cody he needs to be prepared for?
No. I never listen to stuff like, I had this going in, I had that going in, I had this. Maybe not. You have to assume from a commentary perspective that every fighter going in there is, if not injured, certainly hurt. And kind of go from there, because you got to remember, we interview the fighters beforehand. We have a fighter meeting, we talk to them, whatever. Everything's 100%, tip-top, great shape, best camp of my life. I couldn't be any better. I'm 100%. And then they lose, and I was falling apart. I had Ebola. My was broken. Both of my knees were shattered. I just had reconstructive surgery on my face. Like, so you kind of toss all that out the window because it's just like, hey, I don't know. I'm not his doctor. I don't know what's wrong. You have to assume anybody who gets in there is healthy enough to be there, but hurt enough that they're not 100%. You just have to assume that every way around because fighters who lose tend to exaggerate how badly they were hurt. Some fighters who win exaggerate how badly they were hurt. And in the weigh-in, they downplay how badly they were hurt. So you just take everything with a grain of salt from my position, man.
Of course. We get fed those same sweet lies, Jimmy, and we eat them up every time. I'm wondering if you...
Sweet and delicious, those lies, guys. We'll
take
awesome.
more. I'm wondering if you took anything away from Cody sort of being dismissive of the loss where he chalked it up to a fluke. And we saw, obviously, with Yamania and Jacek, she lost to Rose Namajunas. She sort of chalked it up to a fluke. She didn't get the win when they had a rematch. Do you sort of take that as a sign that Cody might be going in with a similar game plan if, indeed, he does believe that it was a fluke? Or do you think he might be showing us something different this time around?
As we just said, and I will take this to the grave, fighters are amazing liars. We are really good at it. We're great at it. It's just in our DNA to lie. So, that being said, the thing is that fighters will tell us it was a fluke, it was no big deal, I got this. Did they lie to their coaches? Did they lie to their teammates? Because you might say, oh man, that was a fluke, I beat this guy 10 out of 10 times. But you go back to the gym and your coach says you got caught with a shot while throwing a combination, get that goddamn hand back to your chin. You can't afford lies in the gym. You can lie to me, you can lie to MMA media, you can lie to anybody you want about how you prepared for a fight. You don't lie to the people around you because they're all going to tell you, hey, dude, you got to shore up this, and that. And Team Alpha Male's too good to let Cody Garbrandt go in there thinking, that was a fluke, you were great, keep doing what you're doing. They're not going to do that. They're not going to do that. Bang Ludwig is not going to say, hey, you did a great job, keep doing what you're doing. You got to add to your game, you got to fill in these gaps. So the people around him won't allow him to go in with that arrogance of like, oh, this is just a fluke, I got this. It's not going to happen. So he can say that all he wants. He went in there and he changed his game in camp to try and eliminate those variables. If not, he wouldn't be here.
Even though Cody has excellent footwork and is normally very disciplined, TJ was able to sort of take him out of his game and make him swing when he was out of position on his feet. Do you think it's a possible Achilles heel of Cody sort of staying in the right mental place during this fight, not getting overly emotional, sort of swinging wildly, ending up in the wrong place in this rematch?
Yeah, no, that's certainly a possibility. Also, when you talked about the mental side of getting knocked out the first time, sometimes it's they really want get back. They really, rather than, seeing as a 25-minute fight that you got to win minutes and win rounds or whatever, the deep strategy and all these things, sometimes getting knocked out makes guys emotional in rematches. Where instead of thinking about winning, they're thinking about, I want to pay this guy back with a knockout. And the moment you start thinking about that, then it becomes a problem. So you have the one side that Cody Garbrandt and TJ Dillashaw have beef. They have history. They don't like one another. And Cody got knocked out last time. He may come in there a little bit emotional this time around. It's up to his coaches, the people around him to temper that kind of thinking.
And one of the other turning points in the first fight was when Bang Ludwig told TJ, look, you don't have to set up every kick. You can just throw them out there. And TJ was a little bit more, I guess, looser with his kicks, and he threw a lot more. And then Cody no longer had control over the distance as much as he did in the first round, and he wasn't able to successfully counter. So I guess, to oversimplify it, TJ sort of uses a lot more different attacks, mixes things up. If you're Cody, how do you get around that? Because Cody's not really known as much of a kicker. How do you close that distance if TJ's constantly throwing kicks out there?
Someone who moves a lot and angles a lot and throws a lot like TJ does, I find feints are really, really useful. Get him overreacting to your offense because he's moving and angling and kicking. Throw those feints, those little shoulder shots, the things that make him bite when he's not supposed to, that'll, give away which way he's moving and make him expend energy when he doesn't want to. Cody, obviously a better puncher than a kicker, throw in those feints, throw in those shoulder rolls, those things that might make TJ Dillashaw angle when he's not supposed to. Get a little bit ahead of himself, worry a little bit more about your offense, disguise the punches a little bit better. I think he needs to do that.
It's going to be fascinating to see, obviously, who wins this one. Obviously, you can't predict because you'll be commentating this fight, but
actually, you'll be on the desk, so you can
I'm
predict it, can't you?
So I am not.
So you can predict. All right. Well, let's just say, from your perspective, this is when it comes to rematches, this is a very difficult one to call. I mean, everyone that we've spoken to in the MMA media kind of isn't sure where to go here. right now, where does your heart lie? Who do you think might win this one? And do you anticipate it kind of switches back and forth as you go through fight week?
100%, I think it switches back and forth. The little tiny details make this fight. And when you look at, if there are 10 seconds left, 10 more seconds in the first round, that could have been over. Remember when TJ turns to go back to his corner, he kind of wobbled. His legs were not underneath him at all. Maybe 10, 15 more seconds, Cody ends up winning that fight. So that's how close this fight was the first time. And, once again, the second round when he clipped Cody and dropped him, that was right in the middle of a combination. If he's a half second slower, that combination lands and maybe it's TJ going out. So the first fight was so back and forth and so close, and both these guys can do so much. What I think it hinges on are things like, does Cody, because of the knockout, because of the emotional side of the fight, get a little frustrated when he can't hit TJ in round one? How does somebody handle being down a couple of rounds? These little tiny mental battles we see throughout the fight, that might decide everything.
Anyone particular that you're leaning towards more than the other?
I
know we're putting you on the spot here.
No. That's no problem at all. I tend to go in a situation like this with the guy who can do a little more, who just has a few more weapons. And right now, that's TJ. He, the kicks, the angles, he does a little more than Cody. What Cody does well, he does extremely well. I think he's a fantastic fighter, one of the best in the world. TJ's offense is a little more varied, and I think in a 25-minute fight, that's very, very important. Dominic Cruz, when Cody beat him, Dominic's pretty much a puncher. The kind of way he moves. It's unorthodox, but, there was if you want to say a data set of fights for him going back, 10 years, where Cody was able to kind of figure him out a little bit. I think TJ's a little harder to figure out, can do a little bit more. I'm leaning toward him right now.
Wow. Well, let's talk about the co-main event, Demetrious Johnson versus Henry Cejudo, a fight a lot of people are really looking forward to. A lot of hardcore fans really excited to see how this one plays out. First time Henry Cejudo fought Demetrious Johnson. A lot of people sort of felt like it came a little bit too early, Jimmy. Do you think it's going to be a more complete version of Cejudo that we see in this fight? One that's a little bit readier to possibly dethrone the king?
He's going to be a little bit smarter. He's a little bit more seasoned. He's a little bit more experienced. And there's always a thing whenever you're getting a fighter ready for a fight is you always tell them, I don't want the first time. Well, I did when I was coaching. Whenever you see something, I don't want the first time to be in the octagon. I want you to see it out here. I want you to, that's why you get training partners and sparring partners that simulate your opponent. That's why you go through all this training is I don't want the first time you see something to be in there. DJ is one of those guys who just can't really prepare for that much. He has a speed and a strength and this unorthodox attack that you really can't find guys that do that. Henry Cejudo's, I don't want to say advantage, but the difference in this second fight is he's been there before. He's felt what he can do. Yeah, he ended up losing the fight, but it's not going to have that shock and awe kind of effect it had in the first fight when you're in the clinch and this guy knees you and you go, man, this guy can really hit. The slick stuff he did in the clinch, I don't think Henry Cejudo was ready for. He's been in there before. He won't be awed by what he's seeing by, perhaps the greatest mixed martial artist of all time. There is that edge of, hey, at least I've been here before. I think that gives him an advantage.
I wonder sort of if this might have been one of the best things that happened to Cejudo, because it was early in his career and it kind of forced him to reevaluate things and showed him there are different levels to this game. And now we see him completely change things. He's sort of got this almost karate stance going on. He's refined his striking. How much of a different challenge would you say Cejudo is now, with this karate stance and more dangerous striking? Because it's not a completely new look for DJ. Obviously, he beat up Horiguchi a few years ago, who also had a good karate style. But, this striking might be the difference maker here.
Yeah, it has to be. It has to be. And you remember early on in that fight, it wasn't that long, Cejudo did get the takedown and DJ just kind of muscled him to the ground. So we know he has that takedown ability. You can add in the strikes that make DJ hesitate on the feet. Or he's a little worried about his power for 1 second. He lands something in the first 2 minutes of the first round. It might be a different fight because DJ's used to being the guy who's leading the dance almost all the time. If Henry Cejudo can bank, I would say one of the first 3 rounds, that's going to be great for him in terms of show, one of the most dominant champions of all time, something a little bit different, something to worry about, something to fear, because so far DJ's looked fearless.
You mentioned the wrestling. How do you think Cejudo will try and implement it this time around? Because on one hand, he's excellent in the clinch, but also that's exactly where he lost last time. And I heard him on, I believe it was Luke Thomas's show, Now the MMA Hour, and he was kind of talking about the clinch, like, man, what was I doing? Why was I in the clinch? So, but at the same time, he did get DJ down, and you would say that is kind of a path to victory for him. So how do you think he sort of implements the wrestling this time around, if he maybe looks to avoid the clinch a bit?
Brandon Slay, Jordan Burroughs, great wrestlers in the United States, blast double leg. If you're in the clinch, you're doing it wrong, essentially. It has to be his strategy. If you're in the clinch and you're not setting up your takedown, get out. Do not hang out in that danger area against DJ. If you're in the clinch, lift up on the elbows, try and get that blast double leg going, where you're not staying there kind of pummeling inside, trying to find your opportunities, pull him off and get him to step and set up a single leg, forget all that stuff. It's either a quick takedown, boom, or get out. Do not linger in that middle ground. I think he has a respect. DJ was able to knock him out from there. So I don't see him hanging out in that position.
When it comes to things to win and things to gain and the stakes, I mean, apart from keeping his title, there's not too much that Demetrious is going to be able to gain from beating Cejudo again. What if he does put in an amazing performance here? What do you think it does for Demetrious Johnson? And in terms of sort of for his future, do you think it moves him closer to anything? Or because this is a guy that's already seen by many as the best pound-for-pound fighter in the world.
Yeah, well, I will just speculate that the fact that he's on the same card as Cody versus TJ, and both guys have expressed an interest in a super fight with Mighty Mouse. I think that if he's dominant against Henry Cejudo, who's the #1 contender, there aren't a lot of flyweights out there that I think are really knocking on the door. This would be one of those times where, especially if TJ wins, because that's 2 over Cody. Trilogy's unlikely, at least for the time being, unless it's an amazing, incredible fight with a controversial decision or something. If TJ wins, it wouldn't surprise me if both guys call each other out at the end of that card.
And you got to think that with Media Day, sort of them two being around each other, they're going to be asked a lot of questions about each other. We were speaking to John Morgan a second ago about that fight, and he's obviously excited about it, but I want to sort of pose the same question to you that we did to him. If that fight did happen, what weight class do you think it should happen at? Because on one hand, TJ Dillashaw wants to go down. He wants to claim 2 belts. He wants to cut to 125, and he says that he doesn't want any excuses if he beats Demetrious Johnson. People saying, oh, you were the bigger man. At the same time, if you're DJ, you want that same thing. You want to maybe go up, potentially leave your flyweight belt and, have it not be on the line, and then maybe try and win 2 belts. Where would you rather see that fight take place, if it even happens?
I'd rather, personally, the hard part is the defensive part that we talked about. Who's more likely to defend the belt at that weight class? If DJ went up to 35, beat TJ or Cody, whoever it might be, he can stay at 35. I mean, he has less of a cut. If he beats the champ, he certainly doesn't have any problems physically. I think he's more likely to defend the title at 35. TJ is not a small 35er. Could he make 25 and stay there long enough to clear out that weight class? And 35, as far as most MMA fans are concerned, there are more marquee names at 35. So Mighty Mouse so let's say, for this argument's sake, TJ wins. And then Demetrious Johnson goes up, beats him at 35, and is now the champion. Well, he can face Cody. He can face Dominic Cruz. There are a lot of names at 35 that fans would be interested in seeing. There are fewer names at 25 that have a marquee kind of value for Dillashaw to stay there and defend the title. There's my argument.
Very, very good argument there, Jim. Now, as we wrap things up, just want to quickly get where your heart lies on this one. Who are you leaning towards? I mean, things might change during fight week, but I doubt it. I have a feeling you might be looking at possibly the greatest of all time winning this weekend.
It's hard not to go with Demetrious Johnson in this fight. It's just hard with his skill set, with what he's done, as flawless as he has looked. The only fighter that's undefeated is Father Time, and I just haven't seen those indications that Time has really caught up yet with Demetrious Johnson.
Awesome, man. Thank you so much for that, Jimmy. Really appreciate it. As we let you go, guys, don't forget to follow the man on Twitter at Jimmy Smith MMA, and of course on Instagram, JSmithMMA. No commentary team for you this coming weekend, but you get to be on the desk. I feel like I was going to use the word holiday. It's definitely not a holiday because you obviously have to do a tremendous amount of work and also research. So it's definitely not that. But is it a little bit more fun for you when you are on the desk? Because while the fights are playing out, yes, you're analyzing, but you get to kind of enjoy them a little bit more as a fan. You don't have to be on. You're not actually being recorded. It's a little bit more fun in that sense.
Yeah, it's a little more fun in that sense, but you got to remember it's a long day because we come out there early, do the production meeting, all this stuff, and then we're there for, before the pre-fight show, we're there. So, previewing the show, we have the fights, and then we sit there and watch the fights, and then we wrap it up at the end. So it's a long, long day either way. So you got to keep that in mind as while we have to be focused and researching the entire time. And so I'm earning my money, guys. You know it.
Wow, well, we can't wait to see you, Jimmy. Thank you so much for joining us, guys. Make sure to follow Jimmy on social media and tune into the fights this weekend. Jimmy, thanks again.
Thank you for having me, guys. See you soon.
There he is, guys. Jimmy Smith. Another fun session with him. Always love getting him on the program to give us his excellent analysis. I love him because he's so free and so funny, and I'll never forget that time we were in his hotel room for UFC Perth, and he's giving us the time, and he's doing that excellent preview for UFC 221, and then who calls but John Anik to ask to go to dinner. Classic memories.
Yeah, good times over there, and happy to see Jimmy find a new home in the UFC. Going to be excited to see what happens, guys, this weekend for UFC 227. As we wrap up, just a quick reminder for everybody out there to visit gsplive.com.au and grab your tickets for the big tour. That's again in Sydney, Tuesday, 7th of August, Melbourne. Saturday, 11th of August, we should be at that show. Brisbane, Sunday, the 12th of August. Check it out. It's going to be a lot of fun, and I'm curious to see where GSP is at mentally. Also, you can check out the channel, of course, youtube.com/Submission Radio AU. There might be some GSP content coming on Monday, which is a Sunday there in the US. So keep your eyes peeled for that. We'll be hunting GSP down, asking him such important questions as, how's Australia? No, we'll try and figure out what's going on with it. So we'll try and get around those questions for you guys. But with that, we'll be back with a normal episode of Submission Radio, normal time next week. Have a great week, and thanks for tuning in to Submission Radio to help us preview UFC 227. We'll see what happens.
Drop your comments in the section below. Drop us your predictions.
Give us the predictions. Who's winning? Who's going to win it? Will DJ remain pound for pound one of the best fighters in the world? Will TJ beat Cody? And if TJ fights DJ, will that be a fun fight to talk about? Because all you got to say is like TJ fighting DJ, DJ fighting TJ. David Jones fighting a target. You never know. These things are tough to predict. Anyway, guys, we'll let you go. Have a great week. Oh, quickly, Casper, as I'm wrapping this up, I remind myself that I watched Equalizer 2.
Oh, wow.
Week. And
the first one is one that you and I reminisce about.
Enjoy the Equalizer.
Very often.
Many a time thought about eliminating many people via the ways of the Equalizer.
Of course.
Subtle, nothing over the top, but vicious and brutal.
Yep.
Watch this one, and just a quick Timothy Johnson. Have you seen this one, by the way, Cass? Have you seen the second one yet?
I haven't seen it yet. I will. Okay. Unless you tell me otherwise, and then I probably still will, but maybe not enjoy it as much.
Well, fun fact for the casuals out there, first ever sequel that Denzel Washington has ever done in his career. So that's something interesting.
I'm still waiting for the Training Day sequel,
I know.
I watched Training Day the other day again, by the way. Oh, fantastic movie.
It's a very good movie, yeah. So I love that movie. It's one of my favorites. Got Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg on a wheelchair. It's great. With this one, and that is the director from Training Day. So with this one, you get a lot of the action that you kind of come to know and love. A bunch of MMA fighters in this one. Cowboy Cerrone's in it. Andrei Arlovsky's in it. Cerrone actually with a pretty meaty part in the movie for quite a little bit there, and plays this Russian dude, which is hilarious.
Oh, wow.
Who Cerrone is.
And he does a Russian accent.
Well, I think a little bit. There's a bit of a murmur. He doesn't get many speaking lines, but he gets to act like a Russian guy and kill people. So
wow,
that's something fun. So you guys can check it out. When it comes to comparing it to the first one, Cass, it's an interesting one, Cass, because the first one was a good level of build-up and vengeance. It's sort of similar to a UFC fight where you build up the fight and then you see the vengeance in the octagon. Here, a lot of build-up, sort of some vengeance, but maybe too much build-up, not enough vengeance, and a closing scene that's a bit silly and kind of takes away from the movie. Also, a bad thing about this movie is in the first one, they just basically just destroy the Russian mafia, which is great. They have some great bad people in this movie. And you kind of get, much like John Wick, you kind of get invested in it because he's friends with this girl and she's like a prostitute, and these Russians are forcing her to be a prostitute, and he's got this relationship with her. So you kind of want to see him get revenge. Whereas with this one, it's a little bit convoluted. There's not really a clear bad guy. He's kind of doing a bunch of stuff, too much stuff at once, and when you get to the end, it's a little bit stupid. So I don't know. It's not quite as good. In the first one, he had a lot of OCD, and that kind of made for a quirky character. In this one, he's got the OCD, but not so much. I kind of feel like they abandoned the formula from the first one and kind of forgot who the character was, and just going to put something
someone
crazy.
Needed to be standing there like, more OCD, more OCD.
More OCD, yeah, that's right. So, you guys will be checking your watch. Get it? That's a pun for the people who have seen the first one. To see how much is left in the movie. It does drag on a little bit. Look, I love Denzel Washington. He still pulls off what would be quite a terrible movie. Makes it watchable. I'll give it... I want to be respectful here, Cass, because I know Denzel listens to and watches this program.
Yes.
I'll give it 2 Timothy Johnson mustaches.
Oh, you call that respectful? I think he just unsubscribed.
Someone asked me for a review on our Facebook page. Someone got an exclusive review. I watched some movie. It was I forget what the movie was even called. It was something terrible, and I gave it a minus. I got into the minuses when it came to Timothy Johnson mustaches, so people can be prepared to see that. If the movie's bad, it's going to go into the minuses. But yeah, 2 Timothy Johnson mustaches. Don't necessarily need to go to the movies to watch it. If it's on TV, I reckon give it a watch. Does drag on a little bit, so make sure you have plenty of popcorn and a sneaky inside food there to get you through it. And Cass, this week I'll be watching Mission Impossible, which people are saying is the best Mission Impossible.
There's a new one out. I didn't even know this.
There's a new one out. It's got Henry Cavill in it, and on 98% on Rotten Tomatoes last time I checked.
Fuck me sideways.
Apparently unbelievable. So I'll be talking about it next week with the Timothy Johnson mustache, a little bit more in depth. There you go, 2 Timothy Johnson mustaches for the equalizer. Hopefully more Timothy Johnson mustaches when it comes to the rating of the fights this weekend. Hope you guys had a great week and enjoy the fights, and we'll catch you with another episode of Submission Radio next week.